A dramatic cinematic scene inside a busy international airport. A young American female officer in a formal uniform is angrily arguing with a black American man who looks frustrated but dignified. The man is holding a passport tightly in his hand, showing it toward the officer. Several passengers in the background are watching the scene with surprise and tension, some whispering, some shocked. The airport interior is bright with glass walls, check-in counters and luggage trolleys, giving a realistic atmosphere. The expressions are intense. The officer looks strict and authoritative, while the man looks emotional but composed. The overall mood is dramatic, realistic and cinematic. With strong focus on the confrontation, it grew heavier with every passing second. Passengers shifted on their feet, some whispering in curiosity, others sighing in frustration. Yet at the center of it all stood Ayan, the young officer, and the elderly man whose passport he now held. Like a piece of incriminating evidence, Ayan's mind was racing. His training, his ambition, his hunger to prove himself, all of it fused into one dangerous certainty. This passport cannot be real. Every detail, every mark that seemed out of place convinced him further. His eyes hardened, his grip tightened, and his pride swelled. The elderly traveler remained calm, his face steady, his eyes carrying a weight of quiet experience. But Ayan saw none of it. To him, the man's composure was not dignity, it was defiance. And in his eagerness to assert authority, Ayan confused patience with guilt. Around them, tension was no longer hidden. A mother pulled her child closer, sensing something unusual. A businessman leaned forward, eager to see how the scene would end. The airport staff glanced at each other nervously, unwilling to interfere but aware that a storm was building. And then, without a second thought, it happened. With one swift motion, Ayan tore the passport in half. The sound of paper ripping echoed louder than any announcement in the terminal. Gasps spread through the line like a wave. Conversations froze. Eyes widened. In that instant, time itself seemed to pause. The elderly man stared at the torn document in silence. His expression did not shift into anger or shock, but into something deeper, disappointment. His calmness now contrasted so sharply with the rashness of the officer that even the onlookers felt uneasy. Whispers rose among the crowd. Some passengers shook their heads in disbelief. Others exchanged looks of disapproval. What was meant to be a display of authority had turned into a spectacle of arrogance. Ayan, however, felt a strange surge of victory. He believed he had caught a fraud, prevented a crime, and proven himself as the sharpest officer on duty. But in truth, he had just made the gravest mistake of his career. The torn passport lay in his hands like evidence of his recklessness. Yet he had no idea who stood before him, no idea of the authority, the power and the truth that the quiet old man carried. This was no ordinary traveler, and the storm that was coming would shake Ayan's pride to its very core. For a few seconds, silence dominated the terminal. The sound of the torn passport still seemed to hang in the air, echoing in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. The young officer, Ayan, stood tall, chest filled with pride, believing he had just exposed a fraud. His eyes scanned the crowd, as if waiting for acknowledgement, perhaps even applause. But none came. Instead, all eyes shifted toward the elderly man. He did not shout, he did not protest, and he did not panic. He simply stood still, watching the young officer who had just torn apart not only his passport, but also his own credibility. And then, with calm authority, the truth emerged. The old man revealed his true identity, not as a helpless traveler, not as a fraudster caught in the act, but as a highly respected international aviation inspector, a man whose role was to evaluate airports, security systems, and officers themselves. The very man Ayan was so eager to impress was standing right in front of him, humiliated by his reckless act. The revelation hit the terminal like a shockwave. Gasps filled the air once more, but this time they were not in awe of the officer. They were in disbelief at his mistake. Airport staff who had been silent now exchanged panicked glances. Passengers whispered loudly, some shaking their heads, others pointing fingers. What had just unfolded was no longer a routine check. It was a disaster. Ayan's face drained of color. The confidence that had swelled only moments ago collapsed into a hollow pit of fear. His hands, still holding the torn passport, now trembled. The uniform that once gave him pride now felt like a heavy chain of shame. The inspector did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His calm presence alone was more powerful than any outburst. With quiet dignity, he addressed the situation, reminding everyone that authority is not proven by aggression, but by wisdom and patience. His words cut deeper than anger ever could. Management was alerted immediately. Senior officers rushed to the scene, their faces grim as they understood the gravity of what had just taken place. An inquiry was inevitable. Passengers recorded the moment on their phones, ensuring the humiliation would live far beyond the walls of that terminal. For Ayan, every second felt like an eternity. He wished he could turn back time, that he had paused for a single moment to think before acting, but there was no undoing it now. His ambition to prove himself had backfired spectacularly. The consequences were no longer in his control. The young officer who wanted to be remembered for his vigilance was now going to be remembered for his arrogance. And yet, in the midst of his shame, there remained a glimmer of hope, a decision only the inspector could make. Would he destroy the young man's career with a single report, or would he choose another path? One of mercy and perhaps redemption? The answer was soon to be revealed. The terminal was no longer just an airport. It had become a courtroom of silence. Every eye remained fixed on the elderly inspector, awaiting his judgment. The young officer, Ayan, stood like a statue carved from fear, his earlier arrogance shattered into pieces, just like the passport he had torn apart. The inspector slowly picked up the remains of his passport from the officer's trembling hands. He looked at the torn pages, not with anger, but with quiet sadness. The silence that followed was heavier than any punishment. It was the kind of silence that teaches more than 1,000 words. And then, with steady grace, he spoke. His words were calm, but each one carried the weight of experience and truth. He reminded everyone present, officers, staff, and passengers alike, that authority without wisdom is nothing but arrogance. That true strength is not shown in how harshly we act, but in how patiently we understand. The lesson was clear. Power is a responsibility, not a weapon. Airport management rushed to apologize, offering immediate replacements for the passport, ensuring that the inspector would face no delay in his journey. Their nervousness betrayed their fear of the consequences this incident could bring upon the entire institution. As for Ayan, the inspector looked into his eyes one last time. What he saw was not defiance anymore, but regret. Deep, painful regret. The young man who had been eager to prove himself was now humbled to the ground, his pride replaced with shame. And then, in a moment that stunned everyone, the inspector made his choice. He did not demand the officer's suspension. He did not call for his dismissal. Instead, he gave him something far greater, a chance to learn. "You have made a mistake," his voice echoed with dignity. "But let it not define you. Let it teach you. Authority is not about tearing, but about protecting. Not about humiliating, but about respecting." With those words, he turned away, leaving the officer standing there, broken yet awakened. The inspector's decision was not just mercy. It was a lesson that would echo in Ayan's heart forever. The crowd dispersed, but the story remained. Some passengers left whispering in awe of the inspector's composure. Others carried with them a new understanding of dignity and patience. And Ayan himself carried the weight of his mistake, along with the gift of a second chance. That day, the airport witnessed more than a security check. It witnessed the clash of pride and wisdom, arrogance and dignity, power and patience, and the moral was etched into every heart that saw it unfold. In life, authority may give you power, but only wisdom gives you respect. Arrogance can destroy a moment, but humility can define a lifetime. And sometimes the greatest punishment is simply the chance to live with your mistake. The storm had passed, but its lesson would last forever. This story was not just about an airport, a passport, or a mistake. It was about life itself, about the choices we make when power is in our hands, and the humility we must carry in our hearts. How many times have we, too, judged someone without knowing their truth? How many times have we let pride silence wisdom or let arrogance blind our vision? If this story touched your heart, then don't let it end here. Share it, because someone somewhere might be standing at the edge of the same mistake. Your share could be the moment that saves their dignity, their career, or even their future. Subscribe to our channel Voices of Freedom, where every story carries a lesson, every voice speaks of struggle, and every moment teaches us something about humanity. Like this video if you believe respect is stronger than authority. Comment below, what lesson did this story teach you? Your words might inspire someone else. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss the next powerful story that could change the way you see the world. Because at the end of the day, stories are not just told, they are lived, shared, and remembered. Together, let's spread wisdom, dignity, and respect, one story at a time.